Oh, now it's officially being recorded. Welcome, everybody. It's awesome to have you here for our 2023, 2024 annual meeting. Yeah, thanks for joining, making the time. We're really excited to chat with you tonight, share what we've been up to, and share a little bit about what we've got going on in the season ahead. So to start with the sort of agenda and housekeeping for the evening, I'll kind of walk through our plan. We're going to start with a little bit of retrospective, looking back, overview of some highlights from this season that was, recap the members, kind of where the membership is, and some highlights from the membership survey. We'll talk about our annual financials. Curtis, our treasurer, will dive into those. We'll then talk specifically about the grant awardees that all the different grants we were able to award this year, briefly highlight those. And then we'll deep dive on actually the grants that we made in 2022 that were executed and implemented in 2023. So we get to hear from a bunch of different chapters about all the amazing work that they've done throughout 2023. We'll then shift and talk about the board election results, kind of pivoting into the season ahead. Quinn, our board chair, will highlight those. And then I'll talk a little bit about a bunch of stuff that we kind of have on the docket for the season and kind of the road ahead. So excited to talk big picture. I'll hand it over to Kenzie, our marketing communications manager, to talk about more of some specific 2024 announcements, ambassadors, bike raffle, and events, which Joe, our programs and partnerships manager, will take on. And then we'll tie off with just kind of any of the questions that come up throughout the night and wrap up. And on the questions note, everyone, this is a webinar, so unless you're a presenter, folks are muted, but we do encourage you to add any questions to the Q&A box. So if things come up, you want clarification or just ideas, please feel free to enter those. We'll try to address all of them if we can, or as many as we can in the Q&A at the end. But if we don't answer them tonight, we'll definitely summarize and make sure we look at those and follow up with the announcement, with the blog post that'll go out with the meeting. So yeah, enter your questions, and yeah, be excited we're looking ahead to the next 2 hours. So wanted to start with a little bit of an overview of the organization. Most of the folks on this call probably have heard this many times, but for folks that haven't, we updated, the board of directors got together back in 2022 and had a serious sit down to update our vision and mission, make sure that was still aligned with where mountain biking in Vermont was and where we as an organization were trying to head. So our vision is for mountain biking to be at the center of healthy, economically vibrant, and environmentally sustainable communities throughout Vermont, with well-planned, accessible, and progressive trail systems statewide. So there's a lot packed into that, but we think that vision is really starting to manifest itself across the projects and initiatives we pursue. To pursue that vision, our mission is to ensure the sustainability of mountain biking in Vermont and thoughtfully promote exceptional riding experiences for all through advocacy, education, and community-driven stewardship. So if you have to break VMBA down to 2 sentences, those are the 2 sentences. So just a good place to start any overview at any annual meeting. In terms of that's kind of that's our mission and vision. In terms of who we are, VMBA as an organization is 1 central office and 28 local chapters, and all listed on the right. The central office, that and we have a couple of folks on here that are out of the office, is really responsible for advocacy, education, managing our membership platform and recruiting members, supporting our chapters, handling things like insurance, and then grants and fundraising as well. So that's a lot of that's driven through our central office. Chapters on the other side, on the sort of complementary side of things, are responsible for community-driven stewardship. And what that encompasses is certainly trail stewardship first and foremost, engagement with their communities, running programs, youth programs, and things like that. Managing relationships with landowners, that's pretty crucial since 3/4 of our trail systems in Vermont are on private land. Volunteering and recruiting volunteers, and then hosting events. And we host a few events with the office, but really we look to support our chapters in those in their events too. So in a nutshell, that's really the sort of VMBA model, is this small central office, chapters working together, and we really think that's been flourishing over the last couple of years. So super, again, that's what VMBA is. The first 2 slides are sort of, are where we're headed. Before we go forward onto kind of the nuts and bolts about what we've done over the past year and what we're trying to head in the future, I did want to take a moment for a land acknowledgement and just highlight the fact that the lands VMBA chapters currently help steward and on which we have the privilege to ride were the original homeland of Native tribes until they were forced to cede control through Euro-American governance. We recognize these tribes, the land, and its stories, and as many organizations and governments have done, and express our gratitude and appreciation to those whose territory and homelands we occupy. So deep respect to the folks in the indigenous communities that were here long before we were. And again, as part of our DEI work, which we'll talk a little bit about later, we really continue to try to develop those relationships and make sure that we're recognize the communities that as effectively as we can. So let's talk about 2023 high level. We can start with the numbers and highlighting a couple of them here. So first and foremost, we are able to expand the amount of single track we steward as an organization across all of our chapters to over 920 miles. So that's grown steadily over the past really decade, continues to grow. We're trying to be extremely thoughtful about that growth, and we'll talk more about that as the evening goes on. But to be ticking towards or near 1,000 miles of trails in the state the size of Vermont is pretty cool. And that also number represents 90% of the public access mountain bike optimized single track in Vermont. So VMBA really, our chapters are really taking on the responsibility of the lion's share of that public access single track. To maintain all that and the directly managed and monitored hours that our chapters and office have overseen over the past year, over 25,000 volunteer hours. And those are recorded hours, which goes to show the amount of effort and energy that really has to go into maintaining these trail systems and ensuring that they're high quality, sustainable, those kind of things. So just highlighting and many of the volunteers that run chapters we have here tonight and all the various volunteers that support that stewardship work, huge thanks. We wouldn't be able to do really at all what we do without their support. 9,600 members. So we capped the year, I think it was 9,623. We keep inching closer to 10,000. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but the members are really who fuel this work as well. So as critical as the volunteers are for making it happen, membership is what allows our organization to exist. It's a primary revenue driver. Curtis will talk about that later. And we've got a big target. We know that those 9,600 folks are a small fraction of the people that enjoy riding trails in Vermont. So keen to grow that number forward, but in and of itself, it's still quite impressive. 28 chapters, and as those are chapters are the sort of the organizations that steward trail systems throughout Vermont. We showed their logos on the previous page. Again, they're the sort of heart and soul of our organization. Throughout the year last year, we added about 40 miles of new trails. So that's a significant portion of that 920 miles were new trail development and trails that we were really able to pursue those goals of accessibility or progression or reroutes for environmental sustainability. We saw really an ability to advance the desired outcomes that we're looking for in new trail systems. Critically, though, and important to highlight, is our chapters upgraded or conducted substantial repairs on over 170 miles of trail. So as the amount of trails we steward grow, there's a lot of work that needs to be done out there. And those repairs are critical too, because they're able to invest in those trails that already exist and think really carefully about where do we need to build new versus where can we upgrade things we already have and be able to bring them up to standard and to create better riding experiences. So a big year. And what the numbers don't capture here, and we'll talk a little bit about shortly, is the fact that this was also a year that saw an historic 100-year flood in the middle of it that disrupted our chapters plans, disrupted the vast majority of our riding seasons, and definitely, these accomplishments outside of having had a disaster like that would have been impressive. But the fact that our chapter as an organization were able to do this in such a challenging year was a big deal. So huge thanks and a pat on the back for everybody involved. One of the things we did early on in the year that we mentioned at the last at the last annual meeting, but really didn't have a chance to see come to fruition until the season kind of kicked off, was this 5-year strategic plan. So we published it in February, and it's been our guiding light for the past 12 months or more than 12 months now. And it is going to be that as we look forward. The process for developing that plan, it was not an overnight project. It was a long term. It was over 12 months of development effort where we worked really led by our board, working closely with input from our chapters, input from the members, which we get through our member survey, getting feedback from our partners and iterating on that. We put together a document that does a lot. It lays the ground. It really lays the landscape of what's out there. That was an important part of the work to understand what are the opportunities we have, what are the challenges we face. So that's a lot of what the document encompasses. And then with that in mind, and with a really deep understanding of what the tools and resources we have as an organization, lays out 7 goals, which they're on the right of the page here. And those are really the guiding light for our organization as we move forward. It's convenient that they fall into the TACO acronym, as you've undoubtedly seen through our marketing and media, because that is sort of a nice way to frame them. But what's inside the TACO are these 7 goals, which relate to, on trails, stewarding a statewide network of accessible, well-planned, progressive, and sustainable trails. There's a lot in that goal, but that really is what it boils down to. On the advocacy front, we're working to move public access recreational trails out of Act 250 and into an appropriate oversight model. And we're also working to acknowledge landowners, or want to have a system that ultimately acknowledges landowners by incorporating public access trails into the current use program. So 2 really important goals that'll help secure, those are really goals in service of the idea of securing access and high quality trails into the future. On the community front, we have 3 major goals. One is to establish an informed ridership that knows where, when, and how to ride. The second is to count the majority of those who regularly use our trails as active VMBA members. And the third is to significantly increase youth, non-male, BIPOC, and adaptive representation in mountain bike ridership. And part of one of the things captured in there is we thought about this as a process. Our goal is not to just keep growing the number of people riding trails in Vermont. There are a lot of people out there, but our first and foremost goal is to have those folks that are actively using the trails be VMBA members and be part of the community that supports the stewardship of those trails and the sustainability of them in the long term. So our effort really over the next 5 years is to capture a greater share of the folks that are out there on the trails and recreating. So, and in addition to that, that's when we think about who are we trying to bring into the VMBA community, elements of education, which we'll talk about later, how we've been pursuing that, and then certainly improving the really understanding the historically underrepresented groups in our community and being active in bringing those folks into the VMBA sort of community. And lastly, to do all that stuff, it takes an organization that's high functioning. So the goal there is to run a thriving, sustainable organization that attracts and retains talent and develops our chapters. And that's critical, knowing that a lot of our chapters have hired staff and are now, they now have more responsibilities, more trails to manage. They're doing a lot more active community engagement. Trails have risen to the profile in communities where they exceed often the capacity of pure volunteerism to support. So we've done a lot on the back end and the behind the scenes to strengthen our organization and ensure that anyone that is a part of VMBA, we're attracting high quality folks, and that we're able to acknowledge the work that they and role they play in keeping our trails up to snuff. So I encourage folks, if you want to understand, really peer under the engine or the hood at VMBA, the strategic plan is on our website. We've got a blog post from 2023 that walks through the plan and has links to both the summary as well as a deep, or the full plan itself. And there's a lot in there. So that's going to continue to guide our work as we look ahead for the next 5 years, I guess 4 years now. And again, that isn't going to change. We may update it over time, but the last thing I'll note on the plan itself is that we had a board retreat a few weeks ago to cap off sort of the season that was. And it was one of the things we focused on is the tactical ways we're going to go and achieve the different outcomes here. As part of the plan, we lay out important activities to pursue and obviously the goals themselves. But it was really neat to get to work with the board and come up and really hone in on what are the specific steps we're going to take to achieve these different outcomes. And that's what we're really looking at pursuing over the next couple of years. So the plan's already really helped inform our work. And so last plug, I'd encourage folks to review the plan and then always reach out if you've got questions or ideas, because we're certainly keen to hear them. So what did we do last year in terms of progressing toward the goals in the plans? In the strategic plan, I laid out what they are at a high level, but what did we actually make happen on the ground in 2023? On the trails front, I already noted that we saw over 40 miles of sustainable, well-planned, accessible trails. So the new trails we were able to add were extremely focused on achieving those outcomes. So adding to the count, but adding trails with a purpose. In addition to that, those upgrades really critical. Again, taking the first and foremost we encourage our chapters to focus on is opportunities to improve trail as opposed to building new. And obviously the over 4-to-1 ratio of major upgrades and repairs to new trail highlighted that last year. And those are trails that have the same, they have the same environmental or physical footprint in the woods, but now are providing better experiences at lower environmental impact, which is awesome. We were able to deploy our major storm recovery fund. So back in 2017, I think, was the original idea for this, with a big windstorm at Katy Hill, where the organization set up this major storm recovery fund, which we would fund year over year, and it would be available for chapters that suffered unforeseen catastrophic weather events. We had a dramatic, unforeseen catastrophic weather event across the entire state of Vermont, which wasn't something last year, which wasn't something we had sort of initially envisioned for the fund, but we immediately put it to use. We pivoted our organizational fundraising over the summer to raising more funds for the Major Storm Recovery Fund. And then also immediately we were able to spool up and do some quick grant making to chapters that needed to restore their networks after the flooding and storms of the summer. We'll talk about those grants specifically, but that showed some of the sort of the success in that program existing and how it could help us respond quickly to things like climate change, which we're certainly going to face more of in the future. We also continue to grow our public land manager partnerships, and we'll talk about some of the specific plans, but both with the U.S. Forest Service at the federal level and the Department of Forest, Parks, and Rec at the state level. We've seen in their public planning documents, like the Worcester Range Management Unit Long Range Management Plan and the Telephone Gap Integrated Resource Plan, how trails are being thought about and how the mountain bike community is really being brought in as a stewardship partner. So it's super cool to see. And then we'll talk a little bit more about this later because it's really something that we're going to roll out this season, but we began to develop and scope out this best management practices project in terms of how we could consolidate all the incredibly strong technical practices our chapters and trail builders follow, but into a document and into a set of really a handbook and some tools that would help volunteers and really smaller organizations be able to ensure that they were following those practices when building and maintaining trails. So we got the ball rolling on that, and we're going to really be deploying that this year, which is exciting. On the advocacy front, we continue to lead the Vermont Trails and Greenways Council. So that's the consortium of trail stewardship organizations in Vermont, not just VMBA, but Green Mountain Club, Catamount Trail Association. We've got the motorized community, the snowmobilers and the ATVers. That's sort of the group of us that all get together and advance collectively the landscape for trails in Vermont. VMBA serves as the co-chair of that organization, and as part of that role, we were able to advance really alignment with the community on how we're going to approach what does it mean to advance the landscape for trails in Vermont, and it largely aligns with the goals that we talked about before, which is how do we create a more effective and more appropriate regulatory environment for trails, so we're not sort of bound by things like Active 50 that aren't really designed appropriately for trails. And how do we better recognize the landowners to ensure that we can secure access and recognize the public good that they're providing. So by coming together as a community and working with the legislature, that's much more effective than any user group alone. So advancing that cooperation was definitely a highlight from last year. We also have a bill currently in the legislature, H673, which you can take a look at. That's an act concerning outdoor recreation. It funds a comprehensive outdoor impact study, funds a resource for the Greenways Council to do the work. It funds actually best management practice development at the trails-wide level, not the user-specific level. So some really important stepping stones to achieve those regulatory and landowner outcomes that I talked about a second ago, which it's great to see that distilled into a bill. We're working hard to get that passed this year. It's a very tough year in the legislature when things come to money, but we haven't given up hope that we can make that happen. We also helped host through the Trails and Greenways Council the first ever outdoor recreation day at the State House, which was an incredible opportunity to engage closely with legislators and have them ask questions and understand really how outdoor recreation is woven into our communities, our economy, public health. Really powerful. We had over 100 advocates show up from the outdoor recreation and community and get a chance to meet and engage closely with legislators. So huge, successful event. And I would say we successfully navigated Act 250 reforms, at least for the moment. Folks have probably heard there's a lot of buzz around Act 250 reform focused on housing. For many folks, it was seen as an opportunity. Hey, should we try to push trails and ride the trails, sort of the coattails of this reform? As if you've been following anything in the legislature, you'll know that there's a lot of things are not running smoothly in terms of how that reform is envisioned, and we recognized pretty early on that it wasn't the right time to try to sort of shove in any shortcuts to getting trails out of Act 250. We have a long-term plan. We have alignment with groups like Vermont Forest, Parks, and Recreation about sort of how we should approach this. And so I think that deliberate and thoughtful approach and not trying to jump the gun is one that we've seen pay off in terms of not being subject to a lot of the acrimony that's taking place right now. So again, I think on the right path on that front. From a community standpoint, we've gotten a couple of really, I think that's expanded nicely in terms of our goals there. We've, first of all, identified a target for that growth. Through working with the Vermont Center for Rural Studies, we know, or we believe, that upwards of 50,000 Vermonters are out riding trails regularly. That means at least once a week out in the summertime. So that's a significant portion of Vermont's population, and B, a much larger number than our VMBA membership. So that term majority, we set a goal of, said we'd love to have the majority of those folks, 25,000 of that 50,000, as VMBA members. So that has become our long-term target. We're right about 10,000 now, and so we're going to continue to proceed towards that goal. We launched the first ever and first of its kind VMBA app, which Kenzie will talk about a little bit later. It's a big lift, but is the bedrock of our community outreach as we look forward. We launched a couple of different programs through our DEI committee, which Kenzie will also touch on a little bit later. But Learn to Bike Month programs were really successful in getting folks out for the first time on mountain bikes. We had the Try a Trail program, which provide bike vouchers for historically underrepresented groups and folks that perceive that as a barrier to getting out on the trail. Literally, they can go and show up and get a bike and take it out and get in a ride for the day. We were able to host a couple adaptive demo days where folks had come and better understand adaptive bikes, equipment, get a chance to try them out. And then, as we'll talk a little bit later, we really scaled up our adaptive assessment program, where we, the VMBA office, works closely with our partners, the Kelly Brush Foundation and Vermont Adaptive, to go and work with individual chapters to assess trails, understand where they are today, identify opportunities to improve and upgrade those trails. And we actually added to that program this year a grant program, adaptive update grant program, which I'll talk about a little bit later, which actually funds those improvements, not only identifying, hey, here's what you can do to improve, but providing the funds to do that. So a lot of headway on that on the community front. And lastly, as an organization, we did a lot on the back end to help strengthen and improve our internal function and ensure that have the capacity and ability to achieve all these goals. We have a much more comprehensive and easier to navigate chapter resource library that we're investing even more so in the future. Those are where chapters can go for all kinds of valuable materials, resources, documents, templates, guidance, those type of things. We've been more thoughtful about getting all the staff together. It's not just our office staff, but our chapter staff, and working together to understand common problems and how we can help one another more effectively. We've got increasingly active advisory council communities, meetings, which are really cool. That's once a quarter. We get representatives across the chapters together to talk about, again, things the organization is facing, hear from the chapters, get feedback. Those have grown and are becoming a really excellent source for all of our organization to get together. We navigated a big office staff transition. We had Chrissy Steckler, who was with us for many years and was serving as our operations director. She left at the end of 2023, and we've really, I think, blossomed as we've transitioned to the current staff that we have. So that was a big transition, but one that I think that ultimately has benefited us greatly. And lastly, and perhaps of most interest to a lot of folks, we were able to award close to $100,000 in grant funding to chapters when you look across the various programs. So not chump change. And the year that we were definitely, in many ways, definitely had a hurdle to get through in terms of the flooding and the weather of the past summer, to be able to continue to direct grant funding to chapters in a year as challenging as 2023 was a big success. So it's a pretty quick overview. We did also I should note, we just published our 2023 annual report. So a lot of the information here is covered in detail in that report. So definitely check that out. And then if you do have questions or ideas or comments, definitely drop them in the Q&A, and we'll try to cover those at the end. Cool. And I think with that, I am going to hand things over to Kenzie to talk a little bit about or dig in a little bit on our DEI progress in 2023.
Awesome. Perfect. So in case anyone doesn't know who I am, I'm Kenzie Bruner. I'm the communications and marketing manager at VMBA. But one of my many hats is also making sure that our DEI work is happening and well on its way to having success. So as Nick kind of talked about in our taco, some of the meat of it is community. And we want to make sure that as many people that want to be on the trails can be seen on the trails. And part of that has been in our adaptive assessment world, but all of it has also included a lot of work from our DEI committee. So in terms of our adaptive assessments, we partner with Kelly Brush Foundation and Vermont Adaptive Ski and Sports to essentially go out to chapters that are asking for assessments and ensure that their trails are adaptive friendly. You can see right here in this picture, this is a great example of Greg Durso from Kelly Brush Foundation showing exactly that that trail is pretty much fine. And it's kind of surprising to a lot of individuals what works and what doesn't work in terms of trail alterations and modifications. But we did 10 of those assessments this year, which was fantastic. So in total, throughout the whole program, we've done 15 assessments with Kelly Brush Foundation and Vermont Adaptive. And Nick will talk about this a little bit later, but we were able to award about $13,000 in trail grants to help make these alterations to trails happen. And with those changes, we are really happy to say that we have over 60 miles of adaptive friendly mountain bike trails in our state, which is absolutely wonderful. To ensure that people can actually use these trails that are adaptive users, we're actually going to be releasing an interactive adaptive map on our website so people can visit that to understand where the riding is that works for them, what trails are like, what the parking is like, all of that fun stuff. So our adaptive trail assessments are continuing and are a really exciting part of our DEI work. In addition to our trail assessments, we have the amazing work that is done by our DEI committee. Currently, we have about 13 active members on our committee from all over the community, whether they be chapters, community members at large, office staff, lots of different individuals. And Nick kind of alluded to it earlier, but we had some really wonderful events in 2023, including a free Learn to Bike event in May at Slate Valley Trails. This was for adults that either had never ridden a bike or else wanted to learn how to mountain bike. We had almost 40 individuals show up for this event and had help with food and bikes, thanks to a lot of our partners, which was lovely. And we're excited to continue to host those this year. In addition to that, we also awarded one BIPOC instructor scholarship. We believe that it's really important for riders to see others that look like them in that instruction capacity. So we were able to award Caitlin Tam one of our BIPOC instructor scholarships, where she was able to get a BICP level 1 scholarship. And we also launched our Tri Trail Bike Voucher Program, which is a really exciting way for people that have not historically had access to mountain biking to gain access at a low, no cost kind of outlook. So we partnered with 3 different member benefit partners throughout the state to launch this program, and we're really excited to see how it continues throughout 2024. I think we can go on to the next slide. So we kind of talked about the communities that we're trying to work with a little bit more, but another aspect is how are we actually reaching them, which is the VMBA app, which we launched last year, which is really, really exciting to be able to say you have everything at the tip of your finger in your pocket. So the main reasons for doing this, we're making sure that we had an easy access to membership sign up and to add on chapters, as well as community builders. You have instant access to member benefits, which is fantastic, including your downhill tickets to our partner resorts. You can maintain your VMBA member profile right on the app. You can also buy raffle tickets to our bike raffle and our trip raffle directly on the app, donate, and best of all, you do not have to worry about carrying around those pesky paper sheets of all of your member benefit coupons whenever you go anywhere that there are potential member benefits. So it's been really exciting to see how that grows. We're definitely learning as we play with it. Like Nick said, we are kind of the first of our kind as we're exploring that. So bear with us as we kind of continue to learn and grow. But some things that are pretty exciting on the roadmap include integrating our event calendar so you can see what is happening in your chapters in your areas. Also integrating trail conditions and reporting so you have everything really on one app at the tip of your finger. Easy access to the member benefit partners through the app. So that includes being able to go out to their websites and then being able to plan your ride based on where you are. So these are some really interesting things that we're hoping to accomplish, maybe not in 2024, but maybe a little bit longer. We will see how that goes. But we're hoping to continue to grow the VMBA app. We can go on to the next. Amazing. So we also in January sent out our 2023 membership survey, and we had a little under 400 respondents, which was fantastic to hear from so many members. Our membership survey is really important for us to understand what riding was like for our members the previous year, and also what they want to see from us going forward. So what we saw a lot of things, but a few highlights include that stewardship and advocacy really are the top factors in getting a VMBA membership or renewing a VMBA membership. We also saw that people really said that, well, 90% actually said that the quality and quantity of trails were good or better than what average was, with 75% saying they had a good riding experience in 2023. That, considering that we also had historic flooding, we also saw that 80% of respondents rode less than they would in a normal year. I know all of us experienced a lot of trail closures, a lot of potentially trading in your helmet for some kind of trail tool in the latter part of the summer, but that was an interesting thing that stemmed from the flooding. 70% also approved of their chapter's work, which is fantastic that people are on board with what their local chapters are doing. This was a little bit lower than last year, but more than half strongly approved of the projects that occurred in 2023. We also had about over 75% of respondents feel well informed by the VMBA office. We really strive to make sure that our communication is effective and transparent, so this was really lovely to hear. We also saw that it was about 60% felt well informed by their chapters. So there's always room for improvement on both ends, but that's great to see that the majority of individuals felt that they were well informed. We also saw that 75% of respondents redeemed at least one member benefit, with about 50% utilizing at least one of their downhill tickets to one of our 5 partner resorts. This is one of the biggest perks, other than the feel-good factor of being a VMBA member, with thousands of dollars potentially in savings. So it's a really wonderful thing to see that it's being used. More than 70% of respondents also felt that our DEI efforts should be among our top priorities as a riding community, with less than 5% feeling that DEI should not be a major focus. This is increasing in terms of the feeling that DEI should be important since last year, which is really wonderful to see that our members are seeing what we're doing and feeling on par with how the office is feeling. Also up from last year is that more than 60% of respondents said that e-bikes should be allowed on most mountain bike trails in Vermont. 43% said the same last year. So it's really interesting to see the sentiment kind of change with level 1 e-mountain bikes. And then finally, 70 to 80% of respondents felt that there were ample opportunities for both beginner and expert riders to grow and flourish and progress with the trails that we have through our 28 chapters, which is really lovely. So we'll actually be publishing out a blog in April of a more in-depth detail of the member survey. So keep an eye out for that. But in terms of membership, I will pass it over to Amy to talk about our numbers.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Potter. I'm the operations manager here at VMBA. So I'm going to provide a brief overview of our membership stats for the 23 season. So we closed out 23 with 9,625 members. So this was only a 1% increase from our 2022 numbers. So we've hit a little bit of a plateau over the last 3 years. A recent UVM study showed that mountain biking community is much larger than our current membership. So we know there's lots of room for growth in this area. Some other interesting stats. Only 17% of our members have opted for one or more add-ons beyond their primary chapter. So this means only about 3,700 members have chosen to engage with chapters or other networks that they may use in this way. But we also had 84% of our members from 2022 renewed their membership for 2023. So we are glad to see that, and we hope it's a testament to how much they value our organization and our chapters. Another encouraging trend is our U25 memberships continue to grow, which the U25 is geared towards young adults between the ages of 18 to 25 that might not qualify under their family's membership anymore, but it's a discounted membership for them. So it grew about 16% from last year. So it's great to see younger members engaging with the organization. So this will help the organization in the long run. So it's really great to see that. Then another interesting statistic is that the actual numbers are relatively low, but our Canadian membership grew by 364%. So we had 232 new members from Canada, whereas last year we only had 50. So that was a really interesting number to see. So we've had some growth and some stagnation, but we know there's lots of room to grow. So we're excited for what we can try to do with that. And I am going to pass it off to Curtis.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Hey, everyone. My name is Curtis Fox. I am rounding out my first 3-year term on the VMBA board and my first full term as the board treasurer. For those of you I don't know, I live in Waterbury with my wife and 2 kids. By day, I manage large-scale North American travel agency partnership relations, and in the very early mornings and late afternoons and evenings, I like to ride trails in Waterbury and Stowe and Richmond and the surrounding area. I'm going to take you through some of the numbers related to VMBA's 2023 income, expenses, and fundraising. And yeah, for those of you that may have opened up already the annual report that was sent out a few days ago, this will be familiar content. Just a bit of a deep dive into what was already shared earlier in the week, but also an acknowledgement to Nick and the team for getting that out in advance of this meeting. You know, they're always on top of everything that they do, and I think it demonstrates kind of the transparency with which everyone runs the organization. And it's nice to be able to be here sharing just some additional details on what's already been digested. Okay, so as we look at numbers, overall membership income grew by 2% last year to just over 570K. Amy just noted that, you know, membership entire grew by 1%, but we still had a good amount of direct income leading to that 2% growth. The most important piece here is that 89% of that income was passed back to chapters. Of that amount, 330,000 was direct chapter income, about 65% overall, and 176, as you can see here, indirect chapter income. And again, just reading through what's already stated, but that's indirect is defined as, you know, services that support chapters, membership platform, insurance, program administration, event support, trail grants, you know, just about 50,000 distributed last year. And of course, storm relief, which we've already touched on a few times and everyone here knows the importance of. Next slide, please. Awesome. So as we break it down, you know, our P&L, our costs in terms of cost and revenue, membership, you know, membership again, we just looked at, but it includes primary membership. So that's individuals and families. Represented here is just over 460K. Also, add-on membership at just over 100,000 is represented in that 60% mark. And important to note that add-on membership, as Amy just touched on, but is incredibly important because 100% of that is passed back through to chapters. The fundraising bucket here at 17% represents about $162,000. We'll take a closer look at that on the next slide, but the big buckets here are really, you know, our annual fund, our raffles, our general donations. The chapter donations and grants bucket and revenue, just over $60,000. 100% of that's passed back through back to chapters, and that's naming grants, those RTP grants, and assigned chapter donations as folks come to the platform. Office grants at 7% there, or 65K overall, are, you know, really grants that come directly to us from our you know, long-term supporters, the Lintillac Foundation, the Conine Family Foundation, and in this case also includes a one-time restricted grant from the Vermont Department of Tourism and Marketing. Sponsorship, of course, is, you know, related to our major business partners like Cabot and OGE, as well as the resorts and the downhill program. And then merchandise, barely legible there, but represented about $12,000. We continue selling VMBA swag. So that brings in a little bit of something. Onto the cost front. The direct and indirect chapter support represents just over 500,000. We looked at that on the membership slide, but again, reminder, that's 89% of overall total membership income. The chapter donations and grants, this is really the same pass-through revenue that's referenced over on the left-hand side in that chart. Office operations, 34% or 325K. This is everything it takes to run the central office: salaries, rent, supplies, you name it, everything that makes VMBA tick at its core. And then marketing, 7% on the chart, or 72K in real value. That's membership promotion, photography, videography, the website, staff support, and new to this year, the VMBA app, which we touched on just a second ago. If you're good at math, you might notice that 63K in net operating revenue is what the gap is between these two categories, and that is to say that we missed our plan, we missed our budget this year, and that's really the combination of a couple of different things. But number one, we fell short in our overall membership target by about 4%. Number two, we had a long-standing partnership with the Vermont Department of Tourism and Marketing, who perennially gave us a $30,000 grant that expired last year, and we were unfortunately unable to replace, though we thought at the beginning of the budgeting season we would certainly be able to do so. And then in addition to all of that, we also fell short on our target of securing additional sponsorship. We were looking for an additional exclusive sponsor for the VMBA app. And because of the climate that we all know of the outdoor recreation industry this year in Vermont, just we're not able to get there. So the result of that, as well as some costs that ran over, and the other things that I mentioned, led to a deficit of over $100,000 for VMBA Central, based on what the budget was that we had set 12 months ago. The good news there is that was whittled down to 63K as a result of additional late season pushes and fundraising, and some admirable cost conscious moves by the central office to strap down budgets. But the reality is we did miss our budget this year, and we've carried our lessons learned from 2023 and our shortfall into what is a pretty conservative budget for 2024. Nick and team have worked day and night to kind of make this as reasonable and as rational as possible, and we've held expenses flat in line with where we ended this year, and represented and anticipated a much more modest income growth target. So I'm confident we will get there. It's where we ended the year, but the realities are what they are, and I feel it's only appropriate to represent that to you as the membership and the chapter support teams. I'll pause for just a minute in case anyone has questions. Otherwise, we can move on to the next slide, which is fundraising. Cool. On the fundraising front, yeah, very proud of this slide. As I mentioned, a lot of work specifically in the late season went into making this the most successful fundraising year in VMBA's history. Just over 200K, 208K to be specific. This encapsulates some of the buckets that we already looked at, but annual fund, 55,000 this year, which actually is a 26% increase on where we exceeded targets and ended 2022. So huge work by everyone involved to make that a successful campaign this year. Raffles exceeded last year's campaign targets by 29%. General donations, which are relatively in line with where we ended the year last year. And then operating grants, again, an acknowledgement of our good friends at the Lintillac and Conine Family Funds and Foundations, helped us to really secure that in. So really good work by everyone on the team, all of our chapter support, and leadership, as well as the VMBA board, to make this a very, very successful fundraising year. And of course, I'm available, happy to answer any additional questions, but toss them into the chat if there's anything we want to circle back to later. Otherwise, I will kick it, I believe, back to Nick to talk specifically on some grant programming.
Awesome. Thank you, Curtis. Great. So one of the things that we do every year that we're extremely proud of, and it links directly to financials, is oversee a number of grant programs, and those programs grew this year. But we'll start with the naming grants, which we've had in place for several years, and the success of this program is really flourished under with Joe Gaynor, who's our programs and partnerships manager, helping drive it. This year in particular was a tough one. As we noted earlier, it was a challenging environment for the types of businesses that we tend to work with, but we nonetheless were able to identify or partner with 4 companies, outdoor-minded companies, to directly fund and match those companies with trail projects our chapters had available and that really aligned with their philanthropic interests. So Royal Group funded a project, or funded the Richmond Mountain Trails, their work at the driving range, specifically the Boulder Downhill Trail there. Darn Tough agreed to fund project from the Waterbury Area Trail Alliance. They'll be doing improvements at the Little River State Park network, really related to drainage and maintenance, some deferred maintenance there. So that's going to make that network ride even better. Fuse Marketing provided a $2,500 naming grant to Fellowship of the Wheel for trail development at Bombardier Park. MTBBT, through their Green Mountain Showdown, they were able to provide $2,500 in funds to the Upper Valley Mountain Bike Alliance for a new Mesquite build trail, for Pete's sake, over at the Landmark Network, which is really going to add a nice new and different element to a lot of the old school trails that are there presently. And then VBT Bicycling Vacations, they funded Belmont for another grant of $2,500 to for some improvements to the Catamount Trail down in Somerset Reservoir. So these are really cool. It's a cool program in that it allows us to work closely with businesses to figure out ways to engage their employees, things they're interested, how we can really come up with a project that not only allows them to provide funding to support these type of community projects, but also in a way that engages their employees. So some really great work that we're able to fund despite that challenging sponsorship year we faced. On the trail grant side of things, 2023 saw us award actually 10 trail grants, and 7 of those, which I'll talk about first, were the traditional trail grants, where we award funding for projects to chapters, and then we did matching grants for an additional 3, which I'll talk about in a minute. But trail grants went to Richmond Mountain Trails to complete the driving range parking lot, Bennington Area Trail System down south for a kiosk and wayfinding at Mount Anthony, Millstone for new network signage, which will help navigate those trails much more easily. The Jamaica Area Mountain Bike Alliance JAMBA to the second of 2 trails that are planned at Ball Mountain Dam, the Hardcorps Trail. Southern Vermont Trail Alliance received a $7,000 grant for access trail at Stratton Town Forest. Ripon got a little over $5,000 for trail mapping signage and kiosks at the school there, which is, again, definitely making navigation better at that existing system. And Brewster River Mountain Bike Club got funds for a multi-use path at Underhill Central School. And what's interesting with a lot of these projects, which chapters might touch on later, in prior years, we'd waited till the end to fund, one trail grant award cycle at the end of the year. Last year, we actually did quarterly awards. So many of these grant funds were actually able to be deployed during the season. So chapters might touch on some of the work that they're actually able to complete with this funding already in 2023, even though a lot of these are intended to be done in the season that follows this upcoming season. I will note what's really cool is we actually put up trail grant funds for a Northern Forest Center Sustainable Vermont Trails program, basically to provide match funding to 20% match for chapters that applied to that program. And that helps secure an additional $50,000 to the funding that's noted here. So Fellowship of the Wheel received funding to make upgrades to Eagles Trail at Heinsberg Town Forest. Bats, again, they got funding for erosion mitigation improvements at Mount Anthony, and Belmont received some funding for work on the Catamount Trail, which they're summarizing down south. So a neat opportunity for us to not purely fund projects, but also help our chapters attain additional grant funding. And it's been touched on a couple times before, but we're really grateful to Kelly Brush Foundation and Vermont Adaptive for the close partnerships we have, not just to conduct these adaptive assessments and make riding more accessible for everybody in Vermont, but also specifically to helping set up this fund. Kelly Brush Foundation provided seed funding for projects to actually implement improvements. And those funds are going to improvement of the switchback climbs on Charlie's Trail at Katy Hill, RMT to make modifications to some of the bridges to make them more adaptive friendly at the driving range, Southern Vermont Trails Association for flow improvements throughout the Stratton Town Forest Network, and then Fellowship for modifications and upgrades across 3 of their systems. So really cool to see these funds put into place to actually implement those recommendations that our adaptive assessments are providing the chapters. And lastly, for our Major Storm Recovery Fund, as I noted before, this fund is available for chapters to recover from inclement weather events. We were able to quickly award, before the summer was even out, 4 grants for chapters to begin implementing repairs immediately. And we're expecting on the neighborhood of another $45,000 in grant funding to go to chapters through a couple of different programs this year. So this is just sort of the tip of the spear. But Millstone got funding to help repair the vast trail on Berrytown Forest, which needed a brand new culvert. WAMBA got funding for additional trail crew to support and keep up with all the storm-related damage. Southern Vermont Trail Association for erosion repairs at both their Crosstown and Stratton Town Forest networks, and then Ridgeline for repairs to some newly built trails that immediately got hammered by the storms this past summer. So a really cool way that we're able to quickly deploy these funds for chapters to bring those trail systems really back online for the fall season. And we were fortunate to have a pretty good fall riding season, as we saw at the member party in October. But really proud of being able to stand up this program. And again, we expect to award additional funding as we go into this year. So those are the grants we awarded in 2023. What we're going to do for the next little bit of time here and pass the mic to some chapters is to talk about the naming and trail grants that were awarded in 2022, but generally were implemented in 2023. So we announced these awards at our last meeting, and now we get to hear from the chapters about how those projects unfolded and the sort of success they've had. So I'm not going to highlight every single project on the page. Where I will note that, again, to thank our naming grant partners from 2022, Cabot, Ranch Camp, Outdoor Gear Exchange, Velocio, Turtle for Green Mountain Solar, Vermont VBT, Bicycling Vacations, and Press4, who all funded naming grants in 2022. But you'll hear from all these chapters in a minute, and we're basically going to popcorn around to talk about different projects and what they're able to implement this past year. So without further ado, and keeping us pretty much on schedule, I'm going to pass the mic to George Lawrence of our Addison County Bicycle Club chapter.
Thank you, Nick. Hi, I'm George from Addison County Bike Club, and we built a pump track last year, and it's right near the downtown area, sort of in the recreation center, literally right next to the municipal pool, and you can see the Mary Hogan Elementary there across the playing fields, and it's near the teen center. So great location. Funding included a $5,000 Cabot naming grant. Cabot has a cheddar cheese factory in Middlebury, so hopefully Cabot employees and their families are taking advantage of the pump track. We also got funding from a Vermont State Better Places grant and some great support from a whole bunch of citizens through a GoFundMe effort. So that was fantastic. I should thank the Middlebury Pump Track Committee and Eric Remsen, who headed that, Brooks Scratchard and Sinuosity, who designed and his crew who built the pump track. And we had a lot of community support. And we've got a couple pictures here of the grand opening when a whole bunch of elementary kids on Strider bikes came and had a blast. So that was a great day. And we also got a second naming grant from Ranch Camp and Mountain Bike Vermont to of $3,500 to buy a snow dog. The snow dog works fantastic. I just wish we'd had better conditions this past winter to use it more. Fat biking can be a great way to take advantage of and get outside when maybe ski conditions aren't that great. In other words, maybe we've had a rain and then a refreeze, but if you don't get that refreeze and everything is just soggy, that's not so great. But we're putting the dog to use, and when we can use it, you can see it leaves a beautiful corduroy track through the woods. And if anyone hasn't yet tried fat biking, it's really a beautiful, peaceful way to enjoy nature outside in the wintertime. And so I'll be passing it over at this point to Kurt with the Franklin County Trails Alliance.
Sorry. So we are the Franklin County Trails Alliance up in Franklin County, pretty much out of St. Albans, Swanton area right now. The Outdoor Gear Exchange helped us to fund a 1.7 mile single track in the St. Albans Town Forest, which is significant for us because it's a 30% expansion on the trail network. It represents phase one of a multi-phase plan that we have in place to upgrade all the trails to adaptive in the system, as well as we just received our first large grant, $50,000 grant to fund what will be a 4-mile downhill trail and a 4-mile uphill and downhill multi-use trail that will connect us to the rail trail coming out of the town forest into St. Albans and through to Swanton. And both the town of Swanton and the city of St. Albans are supportive of us and our goal there. And then the second half of that large scale phase or large scale plan will be to then connect to Hardack and then connect to the downtown so that we can use the downtown as sort of the starting point for access to all of our trail systems using the Missisquoi and eventually out of Swanton, the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail to connect everything. A lot of thanks go to the builder Greg Fatigate with Rabbit Trail Works. He organized over 200 volunteer hours. This guy lived this project in the downpours. I think he saw more rain in this one project than he's probably seen in every other project he's ever done. And the trail came out amazing. The great thing that, about Greg is, he just kept saying, well, we'll always know where the water goes on this trail because he built it when it was raining and it was pouring. So thank you to him and thank you to all the volunteers that came out. We really had a great turnout by our club. And this is the first of what we hope will be many big projects. And who am I turning this over to?
You're going to pass the mic over to, I believe, Max with Richard Mountain Trails.
Okay. And I don't know how to do that. So do I just give my audio?
Howdy, everybody. I'm Max. I'm on the board of RMT. We had a banner year opening the driving range. Thank you to everybody, all the volunteers who've come out for the past couple of years. And Doug, we had tremendous help from VMBA and a number of naming grants and trail grants. This slide is about a grant from Velaccio that helped us complete the climb to the very top, which was by Adam Churchill, who's done work at Victory Hill. Fantastic fellow to work with, would recommend. Worked through some really tough terrain and came out with what I think is one of the most pleasurable climbing trails we've had. And it also is brilliant for adaptive bikes. So I'm very impressed with that. And then the next slide, we've got another naming grant, our trail grant from VMBA to complete our parking lot, which was a huge effort. And we want to thank all of the supporters. We had support from Crag VT, from the Catamount Trail Association, Bolton Valley Resort, Vermont Huts, Velemont, and also our neighboring chapters, WADA and Fellowship, stepped up and helped us build this incredible lot. We got to use it last year. It survived being completely underwater perfectly, which was harrowing considering the investment we put in. But now there is a brilliant, safe, and accessible recreational hub for the town of Bolton, which they didn't have before. So that is massive, and big thanks to everybody. Our other grants that we mentioned this year are going to be put to great use at the driving range. I actually just walked today and got final approval for the flag lines for our final 2 trails planned, which is very exciting. The Boulder Downhill and the Westside DH. One will be a double black, adaptive, friendly mountain bike trail, which is, I think, designed a first in Vermont that I'm aware of. We're excited to see how it goes. It's an experiment. But I think it's going to be really neat to try. And the other one is going to be a more blue rated trail with really fun rock roll options. Those are going to be built by LePesker and Daughters Co. Tom and James will be on that project, and it's going to be a treat. So thank you again to everybody. Thanks to VMBA. It's been tremendous, and we're excited to fully open this year, knock on wood. And I will change the mic over to Mike from Brewster River Mountain Bike Club.
We all good here?
Go for it, Mike. You got it.
Okay. Well, hello, my name is Mike Timbers. I'm the director of Brewster River Mountain Bike Club. And first of all, I'd like to thank Turtle Fur for the support, for the naming grant, and for VMBA for the trail grant. Both grants that BRMBC was awarded were utilized at Cricket Hill, which is a zone that Brewster River has maintained for several years now in Hyde Park. The beauty of these grants that were awarded was that we were able to make significant improvements to Cricket Hill to make it almost completely adaptive friendly. And we're really excited about that. As you can see from the slide here, the Turtle Fur naming grant, we were able to put in 300 feet of machine built, adaptive friendly single track on Megan's Trail, which relocated it off of an existing up there with them. It's I think the first slide here shows a picture of the volunteer day that we did with Turtle Fur. Some of their employees came out on a beautiful day and helped us relocate, part of the trail off of the existing logging road, and make it turn it into some single track in the woods. I think pretty much the second slide, Nick, got that. This slide depicts what Greg was able to do, Greg Fatigate, with regards to installing some new, I think it was 500 feet of machine built, adaptive friendly. It's basically an exit trail, and it really adds to the enjoyment and the efficiency of Megan's Trail. And again, it just between Megan's Trail and Bernie Sanders and Fluffy Bunny at Cricket Hill, we've got probably close to 4 miles of some really fun, adaptive friendly riding. So thank you to everyone, and look forward to seeing you on the trail soon.
I believe I'm up next. Yeah. All right. So in 2022, STP. Oh, sorry. Hi, everyone. For those I haven't met, I'm Carolyn. I'm the director of Stowe Trails Partnership, and stoked to be here. I'm also super stoked and very grateful for Press Forward for their naming grant that they gave us for some Katy Hill maintenance. Sometimes I get self-conscious about how much maintenance Katy Hill needs, but then I look at our trail counter numbers and I'm like, oh, this makes sense. For the last 2 years, Florence alone has been ridden 37,000 times in 2022 and 36,000 times in 2023. So Katy Hill definitely needs a lot of the maintenance. So we used the funding from Press Forward to hire Moose Mountain Works, and he did a lot of work. Not only he did a little bit of work at the top of Florence, but also on Snake and Connector. And I'm sorry that it's not on the correct slide, but those are the trails that we used the naming grant for last year. There it is. This was largely just to bring the trails back up to snuff to the quality that we desire, and also to improve some drainage and other low-lying spots. I'm really happy that we did this work when we did. It was completed in last spring before all the rain, and as a result of this work, these trails were able to stay open even after insane rainstorms. So I'm happy that people had somewhere to go during the flooding, and I'm feeling really grateful that we weren't super damaged from that. We also received a trail grant from VMBA to do some work on Shredder up in Adams Camp. This trail was built not too long ago, but unfortunately the design wasn't super great. So we brought in Max Van Wee from Backslope Trail Builders to help us redo the top section. One, to again just enhance drainage and climate resiliency because of how wet the area is, and just so the water can shed off a little bit more efficiently. And I'm sure if anybody who has ridden Shredder kind of realized that there were like some corners that were really tight that you'd have to slam on the brakes for, which wasn't ideal. And runners weren't really excited about the flow of the trail either. So Max came in with his fancy mini excavator and helped us improve the flow a little bit on the top section of the trail. Yeah, I'm super happy of all the support that we got from Press Forward and from VMBA this year. And we have a lot of really exciting projects coming up this year, also partially funded by VMBA. So wouldn't be here without the office. Thank you for listening to me talk. I'm going to pass it over to Adam at Fellowship of the Wheel.
Thank you, Carolyn. My name is Adam Morse. I'm the director with Fellowship of the Wheel. In 2022, we received funding from Green Mountain Solar to work on some mud pond adaptive upgrades. This is part of a 2-year project, and this naming grant was able to help us kind of push that project to the finish line. So a total of $2,500 supplied in this grant, and those funds, we received some funds, like I said, part of a 2-year project from Fox Factory Trail Trust grant to do a lot of the bridge work, and that left much of the sort of like corner radiuses, some of the bench work and stone work throughout that network to sort of alleviate those pinch points. So in the photos attached to this slide, you can see, you know, a beloved down tree that was like a bit of a technical hump challenge. All we had to do there was kind of cut that a little bit wider. Some great work from our trail crew using sawzalls and chainsaws to, you know, very delicately widen that feature. We've got some examples here of some of the corners that were tuned up, bench cuts, and some of the sort of stone crossings. And a lot of these upgrades helped us in an alternative way as well, with winter grooming and the snow dog. So we do have winter trail recreation on the mud pond trails, and many of these upgrades really made navigating that snow dog through this terrain a lot more manageable, which Fellowship does sort of take over the grooming for mud pond, along with a couple volunteers still involved. So that was kind of new for this year. Spent a total of 305 trail crew hours to do these upgrades over the past 2 years. And like I said, without this naming grant, you know, we wouldn't have been able to get to that finish line as quickly as we did to do it in that 2-year span. So thank you much to Green Mountain Solar, and go to the next slide and talk about our other naming grant and trail grant. So this was a sort of combined effort. Karst Hills in the Heinsberg-Huntington area is a long-time network that was actually up for potentially some development in 2018, 19, the land was going to be sold. And then in 2020, 2021, Vermont Land Trust, the Heinsberg Land Trust, the Town Forest Committee worked to sort of help adopt some of that land on the north side of Lincoln Hill into the town forest, while the parcel that you see in the map there was purchased by a family member and sort of indefinitely conserved for recreation. So with that, there was a lapse of maintenance and a number of things that sort of needed to get tuned up. As you can see in the bottom left corner there, some old bridges that were hardly standing, a fun challenge for sure, but a risk that we don't want to maintain. So we put some new bridges in on Preacher, reshaped a few turns on both Preacher and Voodoo Child, and tried to make some upgrades to the front door climb. This is a challenging climb, and we recognize this network as providing a lot of intermediate and advanced terrain. So while making these upgrades, we wanted to sort of maintain that character of those trails, while sort of bringing in some upgrades that will be a little bit more sustainable in the long run, and sort of make that network, you know, a little more enjoyable for all that visit. So we received $2,500 from Vermont Bicycle Tours as part of a naming grant, and paired that with a $5,000 VMBA Trail grant. At this network, we had 100+ volunteer hours on 2 community trail days, and then 1 in partnership with Green Mountain Valley School. So 20+ kids with a lot of energy, and give us a little boost on some of that dirt work. We had 292 total trail crew hours to complete these upgrades. And, you know, again, thank you to VBT and VMBA on this. And we hope that you'll all come check out Cars Hills, which will have some ongoing work this coming year, as well as all of our networks. We've got a lot of small projects sort of sprinkled throughout all of our networks. So if you see our trail crew out there, give them a high five, give them a holler, and you know, much thanks to them and VMBA for making all this great work happen. I'm going to pass it over to Mark from WAMBA, the Woodstock Area Mountain Bike Association.
Cool. Adam, thanks. And it's, I guess it's WAMBA or it's Wamba. I guess it depends on where in New England you come from. But we go both ways. And so it's great. So Nick, do we have the video for this one queued up? I thought rather than show some pictures, which are great, the QR code there, if you're on your computer, you can just point your camera at it. But
I'm going to take us over there. I'm queuing it up.
All right. I'll keep talking while you queue it up.
Great.
We got the Trails Grant, VMBA Trails Grant 2. We have a trail, about a half-mile long trail at the bottom of our most popular flow trail, Cloud Drop, was Sir Berms a lot. And we would joke for years it was one of our legacy or oldest trails. We called it Sir Berms a Little, Sir Switchback, because that's really kind of what they had become. And we challenged our kind of in-house trail builder, Gavin Vaughn, to see what he could do with a Mini X on the trail. And so, yeah, he went to work. We got the Mini X rental started July 1st. And I think on like July 15th, the company called and said, we need that back so we can go rebuild some roads for 2 weeks, and that we'll return it to you. And so the whole project went kind of way long, but Gavin and Graham Farrington stayed committed to it. I mean, they got it done. They had their headlights on the night before the Vermont Youth Cycling race we hosted to get the final berms completed in time for the youth race, in time for the VMBA member party. It's phenomenal. We've got a 1.5 mile descent trail now from the Cloud Drop and Berms Lot on, you know, from top to bottom. It's probably one that's up there. I would put it up there with some of the best flow trails like Florence and like the Sherburner over in Killington trails. Just great stuff. And I hope everyone will come and check it out. We also, what's great about this trail is we simultaneously, or ahead of this project, we rebuilt our trail called Redline, which is our up trail, which allows you to, for our younger riders, they can climb to the top of Berms a lot. And if they're able, they can continue the climb up to the top of Cloud Drop. And so they've got basically 2 options for kind of that fun, flowy descent. And we think a lot of kids have really taken to Berms a lot. And so we've got trail counters going in this year too. Caroline, I'm psyched to hear what great numbers you guys are seeing up there. We're looking forward to having some data to share next year about what we're getting for rider. So Nick, you want to hit play?
I'll do it. Here we go.
There's music in the video, but we don't need that. You can tell. Hopefully you're getting excited to ride. You get the idea. It is berm after berm after berm, and it's flowy and it's well thought out, and it's great for all ages. And it's been a real nice addition to the south side of our Mount Peg trails.
And it sounds like you don't have the music on your end, Mark.
I don't know.
I'm listening to the track right now. It's a nice soundtrack, so we'll have pause it there, but we'll encourage
Yeah,
everybody to go
you
check
get the
that
sense.
out. Yes.
A great project. It capped off an awesome year for Wamba, and we're looking forward to getting back out there as soon as the snow clears.
Awesome.
And I will kick it. Steve at SOFTA, I think, is up next, right?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Steve Petrick, the director of the Southern Vermont Trails Association. Last year, we actually got, because of the timing of the quarterly grants, we got 2 of our trail grants. First up, we started working over at some of our legacy trails at Crosstown, improving 1.23 miles of Sherwood Forest, Nottingham, and Friar Tack, bringing it up to green AMTB standards. That also allowed us to groom it successfully all winter long, which was nice. It'd be nice if winter would stop. We also, thanks to the storm recovery, were able to back the machine up a quarter mile and rebuild an existing quarter mile of trail that got destroyed in the June storm, which was really nice that we already had the machine there. We replaced 2 of the narrow bridges, made them adaptive width, and help improve the adjacent stream habitats. We also planted about 75 pounds of restoration wildflower pollinator mix. And the great thing about consolidating the trail corridor was we actually were able to reduce the trail footprint by about 25%. This June, we're going to go back and finish the last 1.25 miles of Friar Tuck, bringing the whole south side of the property up to adaptive standards, along with some sediment transfer mitigation improvements and user improvements along Crosstown Trail. Next slide, Nick. Then at Stratton Town Forest in July and August, we were able to complete or start and complete the access trail, which is now named Blue Brook Boogie. It's about 1.25 miles long, climbs through some incredible mica schist on the property. We were also able to complete about 3/4 of a mile of blue adaptive family-friendly, like multi-use flow trail. We expanded the parking lot so it was a little bit wider so that people could get in and out better. We got the kiosk installed in the parking lot. As we were building, we were able to plant another 50 pounds of restoration mix and wildflower pollinator mix. All of the intersection signage was installed. We also helped improve the vast snowmobile trail to temporarily provide access to Silver Fox. This summer, we're going to finish the climbing trail that serves Silver Fox, finish putting the Surplac down in the parking lot so we don't have any issues in mud season. And starting on the first quarter mile of Lower Shroom, which is part of the Villamont Trail Corridor. And we'll be making the adaptive improvements in the Kelly Brush grant that we got, and some drainage and storm resilience improvements. That'll bring phase 1 of this project to completion with about 5 miles of trail. And we plan on building the next 5 miles of trail there over the next 3 years. We'd like to thank VMBA for their support over the last couple of years. We've been able to get a lot of stuff done. Thanks a lot, guys. And I would like to turn it over to the guy that is responsible for getting me into all of this stuff, Mr. Angus.
Thanks, Steve. My name is Angus McCusker. As Executive Director of Belmont Trail Collective. I'm going to be telling you guys about a little project that we got thanks to a VMBA grant fund being used at RTP grant match. This project actually has not yet started, so this is going to be the summer we get the shovels in the ground, so to speak. So this will be a 2-way trail for Belmont connectivity, adaptive friendly. The construction should take I don't know, about most of the summer. So hopefully if you find this fall, you'll be able to check this out. So the other thing I want to share with you guys all about on the Belmont is Telephone Gap IRP, which is the Forest Service. We have about 35-ish miles proposed within the Green Mountain National Forest to connect more or less Pittsfield down to Mendon near Rutland. And there is a comment period that is currently open, and would love to have you, if you have time, submit a comment in support of that project. So hopefully, if all goes well, that NEPA review process will be complete. We can start on construction on that next summer. And yeah, if you want to kick it off to the next slide. So I'm going to put my Ridgeline hat on. I am also the part-time director for Ridgeline Outdoor Collective. So we also got a grant to improve what's called the contest trail. The story goes that the Forest Service designated this existing trail, as the first ever, mountain bike trail within the Green Mountain National Forest, and they needed a name for it. So they had a contest for the name, and nobody submitted a name for that contest, so they ended up just calling it the contest trail. So yeah, this trail is typical, old school, follows an old logging road on the northern and southern flanks, and pretty steep. You could bike it, but it was a little bit of a grind and some pinch points for adaptive views. So we took this opportunity to essentially reroute the northern and southern sections of this trail, and APES trail work completed good chunk of that the past actually last year and the year before, towards the end of that year. This year we'll be finishing up the southern most aspect of that trail. So this trail will be part of the 38-mile loop that we'll be calling the Heart of the Greens, and this is a kind of a monumental moment for Belmont and the Vermont Huts team. You can now bike pack or do it all in a day if you're up for that big of a challenge. But Chittenbrook Hut, there's a hostel in Rochester Village called the Stable Inn that recently opened up last year, right next to the bike shop, Green Mountain Bikes. And the Spikehorn Yurt, which is just north of the Contrast Trail here, as part of that loop. There's also a cabin on the Green Mountain Trail Network called Shrub's Cabin. So you've got a lot of different options. Chittenden Brook Campground, a couple other camping spots. So yeah, we're going to be officially announcing and sharing ride, information, maps, whatnot, April 15th. So stay tuned for that. Come check it out. There is a lot of climbing, but awesome views along the way. Includes Tunnel Ridge and some of the new trails that we've been working on for the last couple of years. Been talking the talk for a while about Belmont, so it's kind of neat to be at the point where we can now ride it instead of talk about it. So yeah, that's all I have for updates. And yeah, I'm going to kick it off to Heidi Pancake with Jamaica Area Mountain Bike Alliance.
Hello. Jamba received a trail grant to close the gap in funding for construction of the lower trail on the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers land at Ball Mountain Lake in Jamaica, and for our Jamba Trails vision. Sustainable Trailworks of Poultney designed and hand-built this intermediate trail named by USACE Hardcore, CORPS, which is the continuation of our first trail, Having a Ball. We officially opened Having a Ball on June 2nd of last year with a ribbon cutting event. We held our first trail mixer the night before at the South Londonderry Depot, where members of several local trail groups, public land managers, and trail builders got together to talk about trails in the area. Collaborating with Sustainable Trailworks to develop our trails vision allowed Jamba to consolidate and prioritize the knowledge we have collected as a group for potential trails in the area. Having Hardy Avery on the ground, checking out potential sites for future trails with a professional trail builder's eye was crucial. In 2024, we look forward to expanding our partnership with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers at Ball Mountain Lake, working with the Friends of the West River Trail to make trail improvements to that key trail corridor and other first-tier priority projects such as Skills Loop at our local elementary school. All of this was made possible by the VMBA Trail Grant. Thank you. Over to Austin of Upper Valley Mountain Bike Alliance.
Great. Thank you, Heidi. I am Austin Fula, the chairperson for Upper Valley Mountain Bike Association. And yeah, we got a grant from VMBA for this powered wheelbarrow. It's a Canicom wheelbarrow. And so we got $6,000 from VMBA on this, and then we were supplemented $2,300 of our own funds to purchase this. And frankly, just simply, it's been great, right? I think there's probably many folks in this call that have used one of these before. We were suggested by multiple other chapters and trail builders that you really just need this thing. It's just a very effective trail building tool. So far last summer, we used this on a handful of just weeknight work days just to really help, as you can see in the photo, move rocks around, do a lot of rock armoring, and then we started on a machine built trail too that was on a steep, pretty complex slope, and it's just been so helpful to have this to, it can be very difficult to move a full excavator around, especially on a steep slope. So just to move dirt back and forth, just move materials back and forth. So yeah, it's just been an incredibly helpful tool to add to our arsenal. Coming forward this year, we're obviously going to use it finishing up that machine built trail. And then we have some other projects. We're working on another technical expert trail that frankly is going to be hand built. You couldn't, someone might be able to, but realistically, you couldn't really get a machine on it. We have a lot of just very difficult spots. And we've been really impressed by this thing. I think anyone who's used this has been shocked by what type of slopes it can traverse and, where you can move dirt. We are very limited in dirt, so often it's very helpful to have this to move dirt from a few hundred feet away where just lugging buckets isn't feasible. And we want people to come back and volunteer, and lugging buckets up a steep hill is not going to get repeat volunteers. So that's all we have. We've just been very excited, and we're going to keep using it moving forward. And with that, I will pass it off to Courtney with Slate Valley Trails. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. My name is Courtney Bankin, and I'm proud to be Slate Valley Trails Director of Operations. Thank you, VMBA. We were awarded $2,000 in 2022 for the Trails Grant. With those funds, we were able to finalize our kiosk mapping. So all three of our trailheads, Fairgrounds, Endless Brook, and the Country Club will have permanent laminate maps. So you can see on the left-hand side, it's obviously very hard to see all the details with the entire network there. And then being that we're in the Slate Valley, we also designed some educational signage that will be printed on slate tiles. So Nick, I don't know if you can click on the tick sign to sort of see a preview. Oh, it might not let you. That's okay. But being in the Slate Valley, we have slate coming straight out of Poultney that will have all of our really useful information, donation information, trail guidelines, that sort of thing. With the funds, we were also able to work with a local Eagle Scout troop, and we purchased materials for benches along the Poultney River Loop, which is a really nice kind of user-friendly walking trail that you can access right from downtown Poultney. So we're really appreciative of the funds, and not only that, we just love all of our communication with VMBA and all of the support that VMBA gives us. So thank you so much. And I'm passing it back to Quinn with the VMBA board.
Awesome. Hey, thank you very much, Courtney. Hey, everybody. My name is Quinn Keating. I've had the pleasure of serving on the board for 2 years now, and have spent the last year in the chair position. I live in West Bolton with my wife and daughter, and I teach middle school down in Richmond. So naturally, my home chapter is Richmond Mountain Trails. We do have some board elections to talk about, but first, I wanted to take a moment to appreciate Jeff Dixon, who is stepping down or terming out this year, whose guidance and leadership have helped to steer VMBA through a very dynamic period of time. Just a little bit of backstory here. So Jeff started his first term with our board 6 years ago, and soon thereafter found himself on a search committee aimed at finding our current executive director, Nick Bennett. And if we're to use Nick's performance over the last few years as any indicator of Jeff's ability to know what is best for VMBA, I think we can all agree Jeff's done a great job with his charge there on the board. After his first 3 years on the board, he elected to stay on for a second term, during which time he served as chair, kindly bringing me up to speed for the role that he later asked me to fill. All the while, he dove into the work of our fundraising, marketing, executive committees, all with a pretty nearly bulletproof track record of meeting attendance. He really never missed a meeting. It was pretty remarkable. Jeff has an uncanny ability to speak frankly, leaving little to question. You know what he's trying to say. I mean, he's a lawyer after all. He often served as the devil's advocate during difficult decision-making processes, pointing out gaps in our thinking or blind spots in our plans. But what was really cool is his historical view and understanding of the organization proved invaluable over the last few years as we tackled our strategic plan, chiming in regularly to help pay tribute to our roots as we paved our way ahead. So kind of that common link of like where we've come from and where we're going, and super valuable in that role. Ultimately, though, it's the grounding effect that Jeff had that I'll miss the most. All of us here at VMBA wish him and his constant companion Lolo all the best in their future endeavors. Though I would caution him to not wander too far, because I am going to keep hugging him for advice for a while to come. So anyway, thank you very much, Jeff. With that, let's bounce to our next slide. This brings us to our board election results. As you can see right here, we've got a couple faces, one of which you heard from earlier tonight, and we've got a new face. So a few weeks ago, we asked our membership to review and vote on 2 board candidates, Curtis Fox and Cheryl Brodowski. If we could bounce to the next slide there, Nick. Curtis is a current board member and graciously stepped up as our treasurer last year, filling the large shoes that John Ringer, if you recall, had left behind when he stepped down from the post the year prior. I'm happy to report that Curtis was approved by our membership to begin his second term on our board. And what's more, he has agreed to be treasurer once again. So thank you, Curtis. Huge thanks there. And now, up next, Cheryl is going to be joining our board for her first term, and enjoying broad support from our membership during the voting period. We were in a unique position this year with just a single board seat to fill. And after reviewing an incredible slate of candidates and based on some very specific fundraising needs we were looking for, we decided to move Cheryl forward to the membership for a vote, and we're elated that the membership has pushed her through, and we'll be getting to work with her ASAP. So welcome, Cheryl. Welcome back, Curtis. And that is it. I'm going to pass it back to Nick for a look at what's coming up this season. Thanks, everybody.
Wow. Thank you, Quinn. That was remarkably efficient. It just, yeah. Awesome. Well, we're stoked. In addition to having Cheryl and certainly Curtis back on the board, wanted to just kind of touch on a couple of things we have on the radar for the season ahead. We've touched on a few of these, but I think 2024 is going to be a fantastic year. We're hoping we have a better year, weather and climate wise, but regardless, we've got a lot of stuff that we're excited to talk about. So just going to take a few minutes. Most of this meeting's retrospective, but on the trails front, we talked through over 20 grants that we've queued up for this season, between trails, naming grants, adaptive upgrade grants. And we certainly expect to support a lot more as the season unfolds. So simply the projects themselves that'll take place with that funding is excited to think about. I noted before the BMP work we're doing, we expect to release this handbook and assessment tools as we head into the summer. So those are going to really help improve our ability to support chapters and volunteers as they think about how to build, maintain, and develop trails that are not just fun and purposeful, but also environmentally sustainable and provide a lot of value. So excited to be releasing that in just a couple of really weeks here as we get into the summer. We have a whole slate, Kenzie already queued up, of adaptive assessments we're going to try to conduct in the neighborhood of 9 or 10 this year, and the funding to support what those grants identify. We'll be announcing later in the year, I hope, even some more support to scale up our work on that front. So more to come, but there's a lot of momentum in our efforts. And we've actually excited to be able to send Kenzie to a couple of national conferences just in the next couple of weeks, where she'll be able to report and share out what we're doing and the unique way we've partnered with Vermont Adaptive, Kelly Brush, and our chapters to advance adaptive riding. So really cool to see what we're doing, provide a bit of a model nationwide. Angus already mentioned the Velomont. We're wrapping up a Velomont master planning effort. I'm fortunate enough to sit on the steering committee for that, and it's funded through some public funding, a VORAC fund. Really awesome to see really the vision take shape for how the Velomont's going to unfold across Vermont over the next 10 years. So really excited to be able to share that. Again, that's coming as we head toward the summer, but it's going to really help, I think, lay out sort of where, not just where we complete these near-term projects that Angus really nicely talked about in terms of connecting Rutland to, or connecting Rutland up to Randolph, which is we're expecting to be, that's just a year or two in the future, but really what that project's going to look like for the next decade. So that's exciting to see happen. And then a couple on the public land side of things, Angus talked about the telephone gap IRP. We've shared a couple of advocacy alerts and we'll do so. And again, the next couple of weeks here as the comment period wraps up, but really important to share public comment on what's happening in telephone gap. We're excited to have 35 miles of mountain bike trail baked into that, that planning on Green Mountain National Forest land. And then with the Worcester Range we saw for the winter, the draft plan is out. The Forest Parks and Rec will be incorporating comment, but really awesome to see mountain biking returning or proposed to be returning to Brownsville under Stowe Trails Partnership stewardship, and then also to see the winter riding we have at Perry Hill baked into the LRMP2. That's the first ever winter grooming of any state management plan. So really neat to see the progress we're having on that front, and we should see a lot of those things come to fruition in the year ahead. On the advocacy front, I mentioned 673, that bill we're continuing to push forward, irrespective of what happens with the bill itself. It's been a really awesome proving ground for us to develop some champions in the legislature. We have representatives like Mike Rice and Catherine Sims who really understand and deeply appreciate the value trails and outdoor recreation plays in Vermont. So yeah, that's just incredibly important as we look to the future. So we're still holding out hope this session we can secure some funding and support for the bill that we've helped craft, but we're actually feeling really confident that if we go into the following session that we have allies and folks with a deep understanding of our needs at this point too. So looking forward to the next legislative session that'll come back as we take over the next year. We also are excited to have Move Forward Together Vermont wrapping up, and folks have seen probably the public survey. I should strongly encourage anyone here that survey's open through the month. I believe it closes on the 30th. Move Forward Together Vermont is the process that combines the statewide comprehensive outdoor rec plan, which as a state we do once every 5 years, and the VORAC action plan, which is something that the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative works to kind of put together how the outdoor rec community is going to work together. The long and short of it is over the next couple months, we're going to have literally across all the stakeholders in outdoor rec, sort of an alignment around what's the plan for outdoor rec as it unfolds under the next 5 years. It's really important folks weigh in on the public survey now to have their voice heard, and we think it's a tremendous opportunity to sort of establish how important mountain biking specifically has become in the rec landscape in Vermont. So we played an important role. I sit on the technical advisory committee for that project, and excited to help hopefully have us step forward in terms of as we're seeing sort of integral to Vermont's recreation infrastructure. So that's exciting. Vermont Conservation Strategy Initiatives happening. That's the 30 by 30 planning. We're going to take over from inventory work to actual planning for how we're going to conserve 30% of Vermont's landscape by 2030, 50% by 2050. We're working really hard to embed recreation in that vision. It's really exciting, and it's also going to be something that I think will expand access tremendously across the state. So stay tuned on that. It's really cool to see. And we're working on our end. There's an economic impact study that could be funded by H673, but we're working to take some of that great data we collected last summer through our Trailhead survey. We did some economic sampling and collected some data. We're hoping to planning to put together an economic impact study for mountain biking specifically in Vermont. So stay tuned on that front. That's a very important advocacy tool. Community side of things, we're really stoked to welcome 2 new community builders. We have both Unlikely Riders and Little Bellas joining Vermont Youth Cycling, Pride Rides, and Vermont Adaptive. So we have 5 organizations that we really view as critical to help building the inclusive mountain bike community in Vermont. They're now part of that program. We have Elevate Mountain Bike Festival coming up this summer. I'll let Joe to speak about that when he talks about events, but building and growing that as a really cool event that'll be happening later or in June. We're going to be improving or adding to our What a Rider Looks Like campaign. That's a really important initiative we launched a few years ago to highlight what different folks look like across the riding community. As Kenzie put it, important for people to see themselves in the riding community. So we'll continue to be advancing that project or initiative. We are doing we're fortunate enough to be working with Press Forward right now on a deep dive of our member communications and understanding how we're reaching out to if we could do a better job and what we can do to better reach, as we noted, those non-members, the folks who are active riders, but what we can do to sort of strengthen our communications and our ability to engage them and bring them into the VMBA family. So we're excited to see the outcomes of that work. We're also really looking forward to it. Joe has already been planning an even better member party, and I should note that the picture on this slide, if you can see through the windows, is actually from the taco truck at our member party at Saskadena 6. These fit in the taco theme for our strategic plan, and it was also a reminder of how good a time we had down at S6 in October. Joe's already hatching a better plan. I will leave him to tee that up in the events to come. And then really we're really hoping can break that, as Amy put it, that plateau. We're hoping to get over 10,000 members, and honestly a lot more than that ultimately if we're going to hit that bigger target. And membership is the single most important thing that's correlated with the ability to achieve our goals. So we're really pushing hard to grow membership, again, not just to bring more people to Vermont, but to capture more of the existing ridership. So we're really hoping we can break that ceiling this year. And then a few other organizational pieces that we're excited. These are more backhouse things that are important, but we are going to be launching a brand new chapter resource library. We've incorporated some important chapter feedback, some new resources, but also just to make that more easily navigable, work with like the BMP, for example, materials that we're developing. We have an organizational ops manual, the first we've ever had. It's been a long lift to build, but literally it's the how-to VMBA. It's if you ever had to sort of hard reset our organization. We now have that effectively almost done. That's been a big lift, but excited to have that in hand. We'll be rebooting our professional trails builder program. This essentially allows folks to understand the skills and the sort of recommendations for builders based on our chapter's experience. So really important to help identify the builders that are equipped for certain projects and based on their skills and experience to make sure we're matching builders up with projects and ensuring folks can find the right folks to help when they're looking for a professional trail builder. And lastly, if you've seen our strategic plan, one of the hires that we've sort of mapped out as a development director, we view that role as really instrumental in terms of being able to secure more funding, really for our chapters and for our organization to be sustainable. So we're going to be teeing up sort of preparation to hire that person in the future. Likely not this year, but at least kind of putting the pieces in place. So excited to look at expanding VMBA beyond 2024, but a lot to look forward to. But that's kind of big picture stuff. I did want to hand it over to, I believe it's going to go to Kenzie to talk about some of the specific things coming up in 2024.
Awesome. It would probably be helpful if I unmuted myself. Yeah, so 2024 is going to be a fantastic season ahead. And part of the way that we can reach all of our members, reach all Vermonters and people outside of our state is through the help of our ambassadors. We had an excellent applicant pool this year. As always, it was hard to make decisions to choose just 12 of them, but these are the 12 that we are so excited to have on board for the 2024-25 season. We have riders from all over the state, all different types of backgrounds. And really, when you see them out on the trail, make sure to give them a high five, and they'll share some stoke right there with you. We're really excited to have them on board. We can go to the next slide, because the next slide is a fun thing that we'll be releasing on April 1st, which I believe is Monday. Our bike raffle. Our bike raffle is one of our biggest fundraisers of the year, and it is one of the things that I always get most stoked about, to see what kind of bike people will end up getting. And we will be working with partners at Pivot, as well as our partners in Waterbury, where our offices are at Bike Express. So stay tuned on April 1st. It will not be an April Fool's joke, I promise. It's real. And we'll see what offerings we have from Pivot and Bike Express. And on that note, I believe I'm handing it off to Joe, our Events and Partnerships Manager.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe. So yeah, we had really good events last year, so we're redoing all of them. So first one is the VMBA Day series, which is basically a community-focused day at the resorts to kind of bring new people to that resort, or to bring returning people to that resort and trying a new experience. Because luckily this year, we'll be working with a few of our community builders at the events. One of them being Unlikely Riders, Pride Ride BT, hopefully, and Vermont Adaptive at these downhill day series to kind of bring everyone out there and try have a new experience, interact with new people. And we'll be bringing it to all 5 stops again this year. The order is a little bit different than last year. And one big thing too is that we have Fiddlehead as our presenting sponsor for this year. So we will have a fun ranch camp party lap on the way down to a after party at each of the resorts. And that's also with a bunch of raffle items and stuff like that, kind of like how we did last year. So hopefully we'll see everyone out for those. If you haven't been to one of these resorts, definitely go to it. You know, if you're in the northern Vermont, try Stratton. It's amazing. And if you're in southern Vermont, come up to Burke and Bolton Valley. They're fantastic as well. And one other thing too with Killington, there is an event called Foundation that we're working on that will tie into the Killington event. So that's kind of a fun little combo right there. And each of the other resorts will also have their own little special twist that is unique to each of those resorts. But more to come on that once we have more planning calls. Returning is Elevate for the 2nd year. Luckily this year, VMBA is able to kind of take a more of a lead role in this event. And it's shaping up to be an amazing event. They're already over 3/4 of the way sold. So if you're interested in a women's and gender expansive event at Burke and Kingdom Trails, make sure to check that out. The team have been having a lot of great talks with new presenting sponsors and yeah, some cool clinics. But again, have to kind of get those sorted out. So make sure to stay posted to the socials for that and the website, and also make sure to get your ticket. And then, as Nick alluded, and that's my hat, the member party is going to be back at S6, and we have a lot of great things in the works. We have basically, we're not doing snowmaking repairs, so that's one great thing. So we'll have a nice vendor village up at the top. We'll have a better connection with Ranch Camp / MTBVT to have a big movie showing. Which actually I'll pivot real quick. We helped support a movie last year called Coming Home with Alex Showerman. There'll be a movie showing at Elevate and a Q&A for that, but we'll also be showing it at our member party as well. And there'll be a few other stops to watch the movie, which is an amazing film. It's already winning awards, so that's rad. But one thing we already noticed last year, we need more e-bike demos. So we will be getting a bunch of e-bike demos to rip up to S6. We're going to have big party laps. We'll also have a triple crown event or encouragement. Not quite sure what the award will be that other than high fives and beer. But there will be free tacos and beer for members that day. And yeah, it's going to be sweet. Pretty much sum it up. Make sure to check the events calendar for up-to-date stuff, because all these things are starting to get sorted out as we come. And you can switch to the next slide, because last year, all of our events wouldn't have been possible. And all of our programs, the Reward Volunteer Program, naming grant stuff, a lot of these sponsors kind of did a few of the different buckets. So I want to say thanks to our sponsors from last year, and luckily everything went well. So a lot of these folks are carrying over into the next year. So thank you very much to all these sponsors, and make sure to buy their stuff and show your support. And yeah, we'll be releasing April 1st our new list of sponsors for next year. And that I'll be handing off to Nick, I believe.
Thanks, Joe. Sorry, I now needed to come off mute. Before we leave for the evening, and thank everyone for coming, we did want to take a few minutes for folks that, if they had questions or wanted to follow up on anything. We did have a question related to VMBA and NIMBA membership. How does it work to get your NIMBA membership through VMBA? So as some folks may know, NIMBA is a partner of ours. They're responsible for the sort of advocacy on the rest of New England, from Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. You can get your NIMBA membership through VMBA. Similarly, NIMBA members can get a VMBA membership when they're signing up for NIMBA. That partnership helps sort of ensure that folks that live in one area but ride across the region are actually supporting both organizations. So you can add it if you're a VMBA member. You simply add NIMBA on at the time of membership. We send that information, it goes over to NIMBA, and then your membership materials for NIMBA would arrive separate from VMBA, but they'd be at your doorstep a few weeks later. So we try to make that as sort of seamless as possible so that folks can get both memberships at the same time. And I'm looking through the serious questions, we had some fun, goofy questions on the chat. I don't think we have a whole lot more. So I hope that means that we were comprehensive and covered kind of everything in retrospective, looking back at the 2023 season and some highlights for 2024 looking ahead. So if you do have questions, you can follow up with any of us. It's just our first name at vimba.org in terms of email. So if you have questions, feel free to follow up. But with that, I just want to say thanks to everyone for joining us this evening. It's a really important event each year for us to kind of reflect on the season that was and share a little bit about the season ahead. Both from the office staff, myself, Amy, Joe, and Kenzie, deep appreciation. And from our VMBA board, the board is an incredibly important part of our organization, helps ensure we're staying on the right track, was instrumental in developing our strategic plan. The photo here is from our recent retreat when I mentioned we really got a chance to sit down and craft those tactics on how we're going to go about achieving our goals. So we're deeply grateful for their volunteer work in helping us do what we do. And lastly, just thanks everyone here for joining. We appreciate your time tonight, letting us share a bit about our progress and successes last year. And yeah, look forward to seeing you out on the trail in 2024. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.